Sagebrush Flats, Nebraska, December 1861.
I should have kept my eyes on the type trays that Tuesday afternoon, but the sound of breaking glass and a man's panicked shout pulled me to the back window of the print shop, and what I saw through the alley shadows behind the Prairie Star Hotel changed everything.
Phoebe Hayes pressed her ink-stained fingers against the cold glass, watching Augustus Crawley, the hotel clerk everyone trusted, hand a fat envelope to a rough-looking stranger, while a second man dragged something heavy wrapped in canvas toward a waiting wagon. The stranger counted bills, nodded, and Crawley smiled that silver smile he used on every guest. Phoebe's heart hammered. She knew that canvas bundle was not luggage.
I ducked below the sill when Crowley's gaze swept the alley, my breath coming fast.
She had seen too much. By evening, the whole town knew a child had gone missing. Little Maggie Frost, 6 years old, last seen playing near the creek. By midnight, Phoebe heard boots on the stairs outside her rented room above the print shop. She grabbed the iron poker from the cold stove and pressed her back to the door. The footsteps paused, then retreated.
I did not sleep that night.
At dawn, she walked straight to the sheriff's office, but Sheriff Harlan waved her off with tired eyes and a dismissive hand. The sheriff told her the child probably wandered into the prairie, and searchers would find her by noon. And Crawley was a respected businessman, and Miss Hayes should not spread wild accusations. Phoebe left the office with a chill that had nothing to do with the December wind. The drought had turned neighbors into rivals, every well a point of bitter negotiation, and now a child was missing, and the one man who should help her did not care. She needed someone who would listen. She needed someone with nothing to lose. She thought of Thaddeus Blackwood, the ranch foreman everyone whispered about. The man who took risks no sane cattleman would take. The man who needed a partner for the most dangerous drive of the season, because no one else would ride with him. Thaddeus Blackwood was checking the cinch on his saddle outside the livery when Phoebe found him.
Mr. Blackwood, I need to talk to you about something that cannot wait.
Miss Hayes, I am busy. Got a herd to move before the snow comes, and every hand I hired quit yesterday.
A child is missing, and I saw something the night she vanished. The sheriff will not listen. I think Augustus Crowley is involved.
Thaddeus turned slowly, his steel-gray eyes narrowing.
Crowley? That snake. What did you see?
I saw him pay 2 men in the alley behind his hotel. They had something wrapped in canvas. Heavy. They loaded it into a wagon and left fast. Hours later, Maggie Frost was gone.
And you went to Harlan?
He brushed me off. Told me I was imagining things.
Harlan is in Crowley's pocket. Everyone knows it, but no one says it.
He studied her face, weighing her words.
Why come to me?
Because you are the only man in this town who does not owe Crowley a favor, and you are not afraid of a fight. And because I heard you need a partner for your cattle drive. I can ride. I can shoot. And I need to get out of Sagebrush Flats before Crowley realizes I saw him.
Thaddeus let out a low whistle.
You got nerve. I will give you that. But a cattle drive in December with drought-dried water holes and rustlers on every ridge is no place for a typesetter.
It is a better place than a shallow grave, which is where I will end up if I stay here.
He looked at her for a long moment, then nodded once.
We leave at first light tomorrow. Bring a bedroll, a canteen, and whatever you can shoot straight. And Miss Hayes, if you slow me down, I leave you behind.
Understood.
She walked back to the print shop with her heart pounding. Not from fear, but from the wild relief of having an ally. That night, she packed her few belongings and checked the loads in the small revolver her father had given her years ago. She did not sleep. She kept the lamp burning low and the poker within reach. At midnight, she heard boots again, this time on the street below. She moved to the window and saw two figures in long coats standing in the shadows across the street, watching her window. One of them was the stranger from the alley.
They know.
She blew out the lamp and sat in the dark, revolver in her lap, until the pale edge of dawn crept over the prairie. Thaddeus met her at the edge of town with 2 horses and a grim expression.
We got company. 2 riders left the hotel 5 minutes after you did. They are following us.
Crowley's men.
Likely. We ride hard, and we do not stop until we hit the ridgeline. Stay close.
They swung into the saddles and spurred the horses into a fast trot, then a canter, the cold wind biting their faces. Behind them, the 2 riders closed the distance. Phoebe glanced back and saw the glint of a rifle barrel.
They are armed.
So are we. Keep riding.
The prairie stretched flat and endless, broken only by scrub brush and dry creek beds. The horses' hooves drummed on the hard earth. Phoebe leaned low over the saddle, her heart racing. A shot cracked the air. The bullet whined past her ear.
Ride for that gully ahead.
They veered left, galloping toward a shallow ravine edged with rocks. Another shot. Thaddeus pulled his rifle from the saddle scabbard and twisted in the saddle, firing back without slowing. The pursuers split apart, one circling right. Phoebe and Thaddeus plunged into the gully, rocks clattering under the horses' hooves, and dismounted fast. Thaddeus grabbed her arm and pulled her behind a boulder.
Stay down. Reload if you have to.
He levered another round and fired twice. One of the riders jerked and fell from his saddle. The second man wheeled his horse and retreated, vanishing over a low rise. Silence settled, broken only by the horse's hard breathing.
He will go back to Crowley and report. We bought ourselves a few hours, maybe a day.
What about the man you shot?
He is not getting up.
Thaddeus walked over to the fallen rider, checked him, then came back shaking his head.
He had a telegram in his pocket, addressed to Crowley. Says the trial witness is scheduled to arrive in 2 weeks, and the payment is double if she never makes it to the courthouse.
The witness. That is why Crowley is desperate. He is silencing people before they can testify.
And you saw him with those men. You are a loose end.
What about Maggie?
If Crowley took her, she is leverage, or she is already gone. We find her. We find proof.
Phoebe's stomach twisted, but she forced herself to think.
The wagon went south. I saw it head toward the old river ford.
Then that is where we go.
They rode hard through the morning, following the faint wagon tracks that cut through the brittle grass. The sun climbed, but gave no warmth. The drought had left the prairie skeletal, wells dry, creeks reduced to trickles. By midday, they reached the river ford, a shallow crossing where the water barely covered the stones. Thaddeus dismounted and studied the ground.
Wagon stopped here, turned west.
Toward the old line shack near Ember Canyon.
You know it?
I printed a land survey map last year. The shack is abandoned. Perfect place to hide someone.
They followed the trail west, the landscape growing rougher, hills rising into red rock formations. The wind picked up, carrying the scent of dust and distant rain. As they climbed a narrow pass, Thaddeus held up a hand.
Smoke.
A thin column of gray smoke rose from a canyon below. They dismounted and crept to the edge, peering down. A small shack sat in the canyon bottom, a wagon parked beside it. 2 horses were tied to a rail.
That is the wagon I saw.
And those are Crowley's horses. I recognize the brands.
A man stepped out of the shack, stretched, then went back inside.
At least 2 of them. Maybe more.
We cannot just ride down there.
No. We wait for dark.
They pulled back and found cover in a cluster of rocks. The afternoon dragged on. Phoebe checked her revolver twice, then a 3rd time. Thaddeus chewed jerky and watched the canyon with unblinking focus.
Why are you helping me? You could have left me in town.
Because Crowley has gotten away with too much for too long, and because I know what it is like to be hunted.
What happened?
3 years ago, I testified against a ranch boss who was rustling cattle and selling them across state lines. He sent men after me. I killed 2 of them before the law caught up and hanged him. But I learned something. When you stand up, you stand alone, unless you find someone just as stubborn as you.
He looked at her, and for the first time, his expression softened.
You got that kind of stubborn, Miss Hayes.
Call me Phoebe.
Thaddeus.
The sun dropped behind the canyon rim, painting the rocks red and gold, then fading to violet. Stars pricked the darkening sky.
Time to move.
They left the horses hidden and descended on foot, moving from rock to rock, silent as shadows. The shack's single window glowed with lamplight. Voices drifted out, rough and careless. Thaddeus signaled Phoebe to circle to the back. She nodded and crept around the side of the shack, her heart hammering. She pressed her ear to a crack in the wall and heard a child's muffled crying.
Maggie.
She moved to the back door and tested the latch. Unlocked. She eased it open, inch by inch. Inside, the shack was dim, lit by a single lantern on a table. 2 men sat playing cards, their backs to her. In the corner, a small figure huddled under a blanket. Phoebe slipped inside, every nerve screaming. She reached the child and touched her shoulder. Maggie's eyes went wide. Phoebe pressed a finger to her lips.
Quiet. I am here to help.
One of the men laughed and slapped a card on the table. The other stood and walked toward the door. Phoebe froze. Thaddeus stepped through the front door, rifle leveled.
Hands, where I can see them.
The standing man went for his gun. Thaddeus fired. The man dropped. The second man lunged for the table, flipping it, cards and coins scattering. Phoebe grabbed Maggie and pulled her toward the back door. The second man fired wild, the bullet punching through the wall. Thaddeus fired again, and the man crumpled. Silence fell, heavy and ringing.
Phoebe.
We are fine. I have her.
Maggie clung to Phoebe, shaking.
You are safe now. We are taking you home.
Thaddeus searched the shack and found a ledger with names, dates, and payments.
This is Crowley's record. Every bribe, every witness he paid off or silenced. This is enough to hang him.
We need to get this to someone who will act on it.
Not Harlan. He is in here too.
Then we take it to the federal marshal in Omaha.
That is 3 days' ride. Crowley will come after us.
Let him try.
They left the shack and rode through the night. Maggie wrapped in a blanket and seated in front of Phoebe. The child fell asleep against Phoebe's chest, exhausted. Thaddeus kept a steady pace, his eyes scanning the darkness. By dawn, they reached a small homestead, where a woman Phoebe knew from church took Maggie in, promising to keep her hidden until they returned.
Now, we ride.
They pushed the horses hard, cutting across open prairie toward the rail line. If they could reach the westbound train, they could get the ledger to Omaha before Crowley's men caught them. But the prairie was not empty. On the second day, riders appeared on the horizon. 6 of them.
Crowley brought everyone he has.
Can we outrun them?
Not with tired horses. We make a stand.
They found a low rise with scattered boulders and dismounted, taking cover. The riders spread out, circling. Thaddeus fired, dropping one. Phoebe fired twice, missing, then steadied her aim and hit a second rider's horse. The animal reared, throwing the man. The riders closed in, firing. Bullets chipped rock and whined past. Thaddeus reloaded, his jaw tight.
This is bad.
We hold them.
She fired again. A rider fell. Another charged up the slope. Thaddeus shot him at 10 yards. The remaining 3 pulled back, regrouping.
They are going to wait us out.
We do not have time for that.
Then, we do something they do not expect.
He grabbed his rifle and sprinted down the slope, firing as he ran. Phoebe shouted his name and followed, her revolver blazing. The riders scattered, caught off guard. Thaddeus tackled one from his horse, punching him hard. Phoebe fired at another, hitting him in the shoulder. He wheeled his horse and fled. The last rider hesitated, then turned and galloped after his companion. Thaddeus stood, breathing hard, blood on his knuckles.
That was insane.
That was your plan.
I know.
They caught the loose horses and rode on, every muscle aching. The rail line came into view at dusk, a single track cutting through the prairie. The station was a small wooden building with a water tower and a telegraph pole. A train sat on the siding, steam hissing from the engine.
We made it.
Not yet.
Augustus Crowley stepped out of the station, flanked by 2 men with rifles. His silver smile was gone, replaced by a cold fury. Crowley told them to hand over the ledger, and no one had to die. But his voice was flat and final. Thaddeus and Phoebe dismounted slowly, hands near their weapons.
You are done, Crowley. That ledger is going to the marshal.
Crowley laughed, a harsh sound. Crowley said the marshal would never see it, because they would be dead in the dirt, and the ledger would burn, and no one would remember a typesetter and a reckless foreman.
People will remember Maggie Frost. She is safe. She will tell everyone what you did.
Crowley's face darkened. Crowley snapped an order, and his men raised their rifles. Thaddeus drew fast, firing twice. 1 man fell. Phoebe fired, hitting the second man in the leg. He dropped his rifle and stumbled back. Crowley pulled a derringer from his coat. Thaddeus lunged, knocking the gun aside. They grappled, crashing into the station wall. Crowley swung a fist. Thaddeus blocked and drove his knee into Crowley's ribs. Crowley gasped and fell. Thaddeus kicked the derringer away and pinned him down.
It is over.
The train whistle blew, long and mournful. The conductor leaned out of the engine cab, shouting for passengers to board. Phoebe picked up the ledger from where it had fallen and held it tight.
We have to go.
Thaddeus hauled Crowley to his feet and shoved him toward the station agent, who had emerged pale and shaking.
Lock him up. Send a telegram to the federal marshal. Tell him Augustus Crowley is under arrest for kidnapping, bribery, and conspiracy to murder. And tell him we are bringing proof.
The station agent nodded, eyes wide. Thaddeus turned to Phoebe.
You ready?
Yes.
They boarded the train, finding seats in the last car. The whistle blew again, and the train lurched forward, wheels grinding on the rails. Phoebe pressed her face to the window, watching Sagebrush Flats shrink into the distance. Thaddeus sat beside her, his hat pushed back, exhaustion written in every line of his face.
What happens now?
We deliver the ledger. We testify. We make sure Crowley and everyone he paid off goes to prison.
And after that?
After that, I finish my cattle drive. If I still have a job.
You will. And you will have a partner.
He looked at her, surprised.
You want to stay?
I want to stay with you.
He reached over and took her hand, his grip warm and steady.
I was hoping you would say that.
The train rolled west through the gathering dusk, the prairie a dark sea under the stars. Phoebe leaned against Thaddeus, her head on his shoulder, the ledgers safe in her lap. For the first time in days, she felt the tight knot in her chest loosen.
I thought I would never feel safe again.
You are safe now, and I am not letting you out of my sight.
Good. Because I am not letting you out of mine.
He smiled, a rare soft smile, and kissed the top of her head. The train whistle sang out, echoing across the empty land, and the wheels carried them forward into the night. 3 days later, they stood in the federal marshal's office in Omaha. The ledger spread on his desk. The marshal, a grizzled man with sharp eyes, read every page, his expression growing darker. The marshal told them this was the break he needed, and Crowley and his network would be dismantled within the month, and they had his gratitude, and the gratitude of every honest person in Nebraska. Thaddeus and Phoebe left the office and walked into the bright afternoon sun. The streets of Omaha bustled with wagons and horses and people going about their lives, unaware of the danger that had just been stopped.
What now?
Now we go home.
They caught the eastbound train 2 days later, riding back toward Sagebrush Flats. The prairie looked different now, less barren, softened by the first light snow that dusted the hills. When they stepped off the train at the small station, the whole town was waiting. Maggie Frost ran forward and threw her arms around Phoebe's waist. Her mother wept and thanked them over and over. The new acting sheriff, a straight-backed man with honest eyes, shook their hands and promised justice would be done.
It feels strange to be back.
It feels right.
They walked together to the edge of the station platform, the crowd beginning to disperse. The train sat on the tracks, hissing steam, the engineer preparing for departure. Thaddeus turned to Phoebe, his steel-gray eyes searching her face.
I have been thinking.
About?
About you. About us. About what comes next.
And?
And I do not want to do any of it alone. I want you beside me. On the drive. At the ranch. Every morning. And every night.
Phoebe felt her heart swell, a warmth spreading through her chest, that had nothing to do with the weak December sun.
I want that too.
Then stay. Be my partner. In every way.
Yes.
He pulled her close and kissed her, slow and sure, his arms wrapping around her as if he would never let go. She kissed him back, her hands tangling in his hair, the world falling away until there was only the two of them and the promise of every day to come. When they finally pulled apart, breathless and smiling, the train whistle blew a long, triumphant note. Phoebe laughed, a bright, joyful sound, and Thaddeus laughed with her.
I love you, Phoebe Hayes.
I love you, Thaddeus Blackwood.
They stood together on the platform as the train pulled away, the smoke trailing into the pale sky, and the town of Sagebrush Flats settling into the quiet hum of a new day. The danger was past. The future was theirs, and they faced it together, unafraid and deeply, fiercely in love. They rode hard through the rest of the day, their horses lathered and breathing hard. But the pursuit had fallen back. Thaddeus guided them east toward a line of cottonwoods that marked a creek bed, the only cover for miles. When they finally slowed, Phoebe's hands were shaking from adrenaline and exhaustion.
You held your ground back there. Most people would have panicked.
Most people don't get shot at by hired killers before breakfast.
He smiled despite everything, and they dismounted to water the horses at a trickle of creek, barely flowing in the drought. The sun was sinking, painting the sky orange and purple. Thaddeus checked their ammunition. They had maybe 20 rounds between them. Not enough for another full fight.
We can't keep running. Crowley's got money and men. He'll just send more.
Then, we need to take the fight to him.
She said it so calmly that it took him a moment to register.
You want to go back?
Not back. Forward. There's a telegraph station at Kearney Junction, about 15 miles northeast. If we can get word to the federal marshal in Omaha, tell him about the child, about Crowley bribing the sheriff, they'll have to investigate.
Crowley will know we're headed there. He'll have men waiting.
Then we go at night. We move fast and quiet, and we get that message sent before he can stop us.
Thaddeus studied her in the fading light. She was dusty, exhausted, her dress torn at the hem, but her eyes were clear and steady.
You're not just brave. You're reckless.
I learned from the best.
He laughed, short and surprised, and felt something warm settle in his chest. They mounted up as darkness fell, riding by starlight across the open prairie. The temperature dropped fast, frost forming on the grass, and Phoebe pulled her shawl tight. Thaddeus kept them moving at a steady pace, navigating by the North Star and the distant glow of Kearney Junction's lights. Around midnight, they heard hoofbeats behind them, distant but closing.
They're tracking us.
Can we outrun them?
Not on tired horses. We need to lose them.
He veered north toward a rocky outcrop he remembered from cattle drives, a maze of boulders and narrow passages. They dismounted and led the horses through on foot, the stone muffling the sound. Behind them, the riders passed by, their voices carrying faintly on the wind. Thaddeus and Phoebe waited in the shadows until the hoofbeats faded, then continued east. By dawn, they were within sight of Kearney Junction, a cluster of buildings around the rail line and telegraph station. Smoke rose from chimneys, and the early train was just pulling in with a long whistle.
We go in together. Stay close.
They rode down the main street, drawing stares from early risers. The telegraph station was a small wooden building next to the depot, and Thaddeus tied the horses outside, while Phoebe pushed through the door. The operator, a bald man with spectacles, looked up from his desk. The operator asked what they needed, and Phoebe spoke quickly, explaining they needed to send an urgent message to the federal marshal in Omaha. The operator's eyes widened as she described the missing child and the corruption in Sagebrush Flats. The operator agreed to send it immediately, and Phoebe dictated the message while Thaddeus watched the street through the window. Then, he saw them. 3 riders coming fast from the west, and one of them was the man with the scar from the ridge.
Phoebe, we need to go. Now.
She was still dictating, her words urgent.
Just one more line.
The operator's fingers flew over the key, tapping out the message in Morse code. Outside, the riders dismounted, spreading out. Thaddeus drew his rifle.
They're here.
Phoebe finished and turned.
Is it sent?
The operator nodded. The operator confirmed it was transmitted and received in Omaha. Phoebe grabbed Thaddeus's arm.
Then let's finish this.
They stepped out into the street just as the 3 men approached. The man with the scar sneered. The scarred man said they were coming with him, and Crowley wanted to talk.
Tell Crowley he can talk to the federal marshal. Message is already in Omaha.
The scarred man's face went pale, then red with fury. He reached for his gun, and Thaddeus fired first. The shot echoed across the junction, and people screamed and scattered. The other 2 men drew, and Phoebe fired twice, dropping 1. Thaddeus took cover behind a water trough, trading shots with the last man. The scarred man staggered, clutching his shoulder, and tried to run. Phoebe stepped into his path, her revolver aimed steady.
You're done.
He collapsed, and within minutes the local constable arrived with deputies. Thaddeus and Phoebe explained everything, and the constable sent men to arrest the wounded gunman. By mid-morning, a reply came from Omaha. The federal marshal was sending agents to Sagebrush Flats immediately. Crowley and the sheriff would be taken into custody. The missing child had been found safe, hidden by a ranch family who feared retaliation. Relief washed over Phoebe so strongly her knees buckled, and Thaddeus caught her.
It's over. You did it.
We did it.
They stood there in the street, exhausted and battered, and she looked up at him with a smile that made his heart twist.
Now what?
Now we go home. Together.
She nodded, and he kissed her, right there in front of the telegraph station, with the train whistling in the background and people watching. It was soft and fierce at once, a promise sealed. When they pulled apart, she was laughing.
You know, you're still reckless.
And you're still too smart for your own good.
Good thing we balance each other out.
They collected their horses and rode back west as the sun climbed higher, the frost melting on the grass. By evening, they reached Sagebrush Flats, where news of Crowley's arrest had already spread. The townspeople gathered in the street, cheering and asking questions. Thaddeus and Phoebe dismounted outside the print shop, and she unlocked the door, turning to him.
I suppose you'll be heading back to the ranch now.
I suppose I should. But I'm thinking maybe I'll stick around town a bit, help you get the paper running again. If you'll have me.
I'll have you.
He grinned and pulled her close, and she kissed him again, slower this time, savoring it. When they broke apart, the sun was setting, painting the sky gold and crimson.
Think we can make this work? A foreman and a typesetter?
I think we already did.
They stood there on the wooden sidewalk, his arm around her shoulders, watching the town settle into evening. The drought wasn't over, and there would be hard days ahead, but they'd face them together. And that was enough. She witnessed a crime and became the target. This cowboy saved her life. In the drought-stricken prairie town of Sagebrush Flats, Nebraska, in 1861, newspaper typesetter Phoebe Hayes witnesses a deadly crime and becomes the next target of a ruthless hotel clerk and his hired guns. Ranch foreman Thaddeus Blackwood, reckless and brave, teams up with her to survive a desperate chase across the open plains, uncover corruption, and rescue a missing child. With bullets flying and danger at every turn, they must choose between vengeance and justice, and discover that love can bloom even in the harshest wilderness. A thrilling Wild West story of courage, resilience, and romance. Subscribe for more epic historical adventures. Wild West romance, historical romance, cowboy love story, 1861 Nebraska, Western action, prairie adventure, typesetter heroine, ranch foreman hero, gunfight showdown, telegraph rescue, missing child mystery, corrupt sheriff, hired guns, horseback chase, drought survival, Sagebrush Flats, frontier justice, B, rave heroine, reckless cowboy, happy ending romance, colorized late 1800s American West photograph. Natural light, gentle contrast, slightly soft focus, subtle film grain, faint dust/scratches, slight vignetting, no text, no watermark. Handsome, rugged ranch foreman in his mid-30s, with dark brown wavy hair, strong jaw, steel gray eyes, wearing tan work shirt and dark brown leather vest and black cowboy hat. Stunning, beautiful typesetter in her late 20s with chestnut brown hair pinned up. Hazel eyes, wearing dark green dress with ivory blouse. Intense action moment. Couple standing back to back in a dusty street, firing weapons at approaching gunmen. Him with rifle raised, her with revolver extended, both faces determined and fierce. Foreground showing dust and spent cartridges. Midground with armed riders on horseback charging toward them. Background showing wooden frontier town buildings and dramatic overcast sky. Guns the days that followed, settled into a rhythm neither Phoebe nor Thaddeus had expected. Augustus Crowley and his hired guns sat in cells awaiting trial. And Sheriff Mercer resigned in disgrace, replaced by a temporary deputy marshal sent from Lincoln. The missing child, a 7-year-old girl named Sarah, was reunited with her frantic parents after being found hidden in a root cellar beneath the hotel, terrified but unharmed. The townspeople gathered in the street that evening, cheering and weeping as the little girl ran into her mother's arms. Phoebe stood beside Thaddeus, her hand clasped in his, and felt something shift inside her chest. A warmth that had nothing to do with the setting sun.
That's what matters, he said quietly, watching the reunion. All of it. Every shot fired, and every mile ridden. It was worth it for that.
It was, she agreed, her voice thick with emotion. And I wouldn't have made it without you.
You're the bravest woman I've ever known, Phoebe Hayes. I'd ride through hell beside you any day.
She looked up at him, saw the raw honesty in his steel gray eyes, and felt her heart skip. The next morning, Thaddeus returned to the Broken Arrow Ranch to check on his crew and the herd. The drought had eased slightly with a brief rain shower, and the shared wells were holding. His men greeted him with relief and questions, and he spent the day catching up on work, mending fences, and counting cattle. But his thoughts kept drifting back to town, to the print shop, to Phoebe. By mid-afternoon, he couldn't stand it anymore and saddled his horse, riding back into Sagebrush Flats under a pale blue sky. He found her at the print shop, ink-stained and focused, setting type for the next edition.
"Thought you might need some company," he said from the doorway.
She looked up, a smile breaking across her face. "Always," she said. "Especially yours."
He stepped inside, removed his hat, and crossed to her.
"I've been thinking," he said, "about us, about what comes next."
"So have I," she admitted, setting down the type block.
"I don't want to lose this, Phoebe. I don't want to lose you."
"You won't," she said firmly. "I'm not going anywhere."
"Good," he said, his voice rough with relief. "Because I love you. I didn't plan on it, didn't expect it, but I do."
Her breath caught. "I love you too, Thaddeus." "I think I started falling the moment you stood up for me in that street."
He pulled her close, and she went willingly, pressing her forehead to his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. They stood like that for a long moment, the print shop quiet around them, the scent of ink and paper and leather filling the air. When they finally pulled apart, she smiled up at him, her hazel eyes bright.
"So what do we do now?" she asked.
"We live," he said simply. "We work. We fight for what matters, and we don't waste a single day."
She nodded, her hand still in his. Over the following weeks, they fell into a new pattern. Thaddeus spent his days at the ranch, managing the herd and his crew, while Phoebe ran the print shop, publishing stories that kept the town informed and honest. In the evenings, he would ride into town, and they would walk together, talking about everything and nothing, learning each other's rhythms and quirks. The town watched with approval, the older women whispering about weddings, and the men clapping Thaddeus on the back with knowing grins. One crisp December evening, as the first frost glittered on the boardwalk, Thaddeus arrived at the print shop with a small package wrapped in brown paper.
"For you," he said, handing it to her.
"What is it?" she asked, surprised.
"Open it and see."
She unwrapped the paper carefully, revealing a leather-bound journal, blank pages waiting to be filled.
"Thaddeus, it's beautiful."
"I figured you could use it for your stories," he said. "The ones you don't print, the ones just for you."
She looked up at him, touched beyond words. "Thank you."
"There's more," he said, suddenly looking uncertain. "I've been thinking about the future, about building something permanent. I want to expand the ranch, maybe start a family someday. And I want you beside me for all of it."
Her eyes widened. "Are you asking what I think you're asking?"
"Not yet," he said with a crooked smile. "I'm working up to it. But I wanted you to know where my heart is."
"Mine's in the same place," she said softly. "Wherever you are, that's where I want to be."
The trial of Augustus Crowley and his men took place in late December, just before the holiday. The circuit judge arrived from Lincoln, stern and uncompromising, and heard the evidence over 3 days. Phoebe testified, her voice steady, as she recounted what she had witnessed in the alley that night. Thaddeus sat in the courtroom, his presence a quiet anchor, and when she stepped down from the stand, he met her at the door and took her hand. The jury deliberated for less than 2 hours. Crowley was sentenced to 15 years in prison for conspiracy to murder and kidnapping. His hired guns received longer sentences, and Sheriff Mercer was charged with corruption and removed from office permanently. The town exhaled in collective relief. Justice, though delayed, had been served. On the evening after the trial, Thaddeus took Phoebe to the train station at the edge of town. The westbound train was due in an hour, and they stood on the platform under a sky streaked with pink and gold, the winter air sharp and clean.
"I got a telegram today," he said, pulling a folded paper from his vest pocket. "From my brother back in Missouri. He's offering me a partnership in his cattle business. Good money, steady work."
Her heart sank. Are you going to take it?
"No," he said firmly. "I wrote him back this afternoon. Told him I've got everything I need right here."
She smiled, relief flooding through her. I'm glad.
"Besides," he said, tucking the telegram away, "I've got a cattle drive to plan for spring, and I'll need a partner for that."
A partner? She asked, raising an eyebrow.
"Someone brave, smart, and steady under fire. Someone I trust with my life."
She laughed. I think I know someone who might be interested.
The train whistle sounded in the distance, a long, mournful note that echoed across the prairie. They turned toward the sound, watching the locomotive approach, smoke trailing from its stack.
"Phoebe," he said, turning back to her, his voice serious. "I don't have much. A ranch, a crew, a herd that's seen better days. But I've got a future, and I want to share it with you. Will you marry me?"
She stared at him, her breath catching. Yes, she said, her voice breaking with joy. Yes, Thaddeus, I will.
He pulled her into his arms, kissing her as the train pulled into the station, the whistle blowing again, sharp and triumphant. She kissed him back, her hands fisting in his vest, and when they finally broke apart, they were both laughing, breathless and giddy.
"I love you, Phoebe Hayes," he said.
I love you, Thaddeus Blackwood, she replied.
The train hissed and clanged behind them, passengers disembarking, freight being unloaded, but they didn't move. They stood there on the platform, wrapped in each other's arms, the future stretching out before them bright and wide and full of promise. The drought would pass, the seasons would turn, and they would face whatever came together, side by side, partners in every sense of the word. And as the train pulled away again, heading west into the fading light, Thaddeus tipped his hat back and grinned down at her.
"Ready for the next adventure?" he asked.
Always, she said, smiling up at him. As long as it's with you. The one the diction exists sonnen on the band sempalan. Et the map of sea was dawn. Akira me year stress ben lid voland was trans. I see will list feebled frown. Was strad. Gorm never wistink didn't turn out of their fam. I were someone. I even fan. When one seeing in those braes, Bugam was into the safe, rebartry despandats.
The days that followed were filled with planning and preparation. Phoebe returned to the print shop, but now she worked alongside Thaddeus in the evenings, helping him map out the spring cattle drive route and organize supplies. The town had changed after the trial. Augustus Crowley's arrest had sent shockwaves through Sagebrush Flats, and the new sheriff, a straight-backed former cavalry officer named Morrison, had begun cleaning house. The corrupted deputies were dismissed, and honest men took their places. The widow Hargrove recovered slowly, her grandson safe at her side, and she made a point of visiting Phoebe at the print shop to thank her personally. Winter deepened, bringing snow that blanketed the prairie in white and turned the landscape into a stark, frozen beauty. Thaddeus's ranch hands worked hard to keep the cattle fed and watered, breaking ice on the shared wells and hauling hay from the barn. Phoebe spent her mornings setting type and her afternoons riding out to the ranch, where she learned the rhythms of ranch life. She learned to mend tack, to read the weather, to handle a horse in deep snow. Thaddeus was patient and encouraging, teaching her with a gentleness that surprised them both. One evening in late January, as they sat by the fire in the ranch house, he told her about his past.
"I grew up hard," he said, staring into the flames. "My father drank himself to death, and my mother worked herself into the ground trying to keep us fed. I swore I'd never be like him, never let anyone down. But I became reckless instead, always proving I was tough, always taking risks. I thought that was strength."
And now, she asked quietly,
"Now I know strength is choosing to stay, to build something, to let someone in. You taught me that."
She reached for his hand. We taught each other.
In February, a late blizzard struck, trapping them at the ranch for 3 days. They spent the time playing cards, reading aloud from a battered copy of Ivanhoe, and talking about their future. Phoebe told him about her dream of starting a newspaper of her own, one that told the truth and held powerful men accountable. Thaddeus told her about his dream of expanding the ranch, buying more land, building a legacy. They realized their dreams fit together, two pieces of the same puzzle. When the storm finally broke, they rode back to town together, the sun brilliant on the fresh snow, the air so cold it burned their lungs. The town was digging itself out, shovels scraping, voices calling, smoke rising from every chimney. Phoebe returned to the print shop and set an announcement in the next edition. Phoebe Hayes and Thaddeus Blackwood to wed in April. The response was immediate and enthusiastic. The widow Hargrove insisted on hosting the reception at her hotel. The town ladies organized a quilting bee to make them a wedding quilt. Even the new sheriff offered to stand as a witness. March arrived with the first thaw, and with it came the final piece of the puzzle. A second telegram arrived for Thaddeus, this one from a cattle buyer in Omaha. The buyer had heard about the trial and Thaddeus's role in bringing Crowley to justice, and he was offering a premium contract for the spring drive. It was the break Thaddeus had been hoping for, the financial security that would allow him to marry without worry. He showed the telegram to Phoebe, his face alight with excitement.
"This changes everything," he said. "We can afford to expand, to hire more hands, to build that future we talked about."
"Then let's do it," she said, kissing him. "Let's build it together."
The wedding was set for the first Saturday in April, just before the cattle drive was scheduled to begin. The town turned out in force, filling the small church and spilling out onto the steps. Phoebe wore a dress of cream-colored silk that the widow Hargrove had insisted on buying for her. And Thaddeus wore a new black suit, his hair neatly combed, his boots polished to a shine. They exchanged vows in front of the altar, their voices steady and sure, and when the preacher pronounced them man and wife, the church erupted in cheers. The reception at the hotel was a joyous affair, with music and dancing, and a feast that seemed to go on forever. Thaddeus danced with Phoebe until her feet ached, and then they slipped away into the cool evening, walking hand in hand down the main street of Sagebrush Flats. The town was quiet now, the lights glowing in windows, the stars bright overhead. They stopped outside the print shop, and Phoebe leaned against the door, smiling up at him.
Mrs. Blackwood, she said, testing the name. I like the sound of that.
So do I, he said, pulling her close.
They stood there for a long moment, wrapped in each other's arms, the future spreading out before them like the prairie itself, vast and open and full of possibility.